Have you ever felt trapped by your own thoughts, imprisoned by circumstances that seem beyond your control, constantly battling against the storms of life that threaten to overwhelm you? What if I told you that right now, in this very moment, you possess within yourself an extraordinary power, a divine capability that can lift you above every conflict, every struggle, every limitation that has held you back? This isn't just philosophy. This is the transformative truth that James Allen reveals in his profound work. And today, you're about to discover how to access that power and completely transform your existence. There exists within the human experience a remarkable paradox that most people never fully comprehend during their entire lifetime. We spend our days reacting to circumstances, believing ourselves to be victims of our environment, convinced that happiness, success, and peace are determined by external factors beyond our influence. We blame our difficulties on other people, on society, on our past, on our limitations, on anything outside ourselves. Yet all the while, concealed within the depths of our own consciousness, lies an untapped reservoir of strength, wisdom, and serenity that remains dormant simply because we haven't learned to recognize it, cultivate it, and harness its incredible potential. James Allen understood this truth with crystalline clarity, and his insights pierce through the illusions that keep humanity bound in unnecessary suffering. He recognized that life itself is not the problem, circumstances are not the problem, other people are not the problem. The true source of our turmoil, our distress, our frustration exists entirely in how we perceive, interpret, and respond to the world around us. This realization is not meant to discourage you, quite the opposite. It's the most liberating truth you could possibly discover, because it means that your freedom, your peace, your joy are not dependent on changing the entire world around you, but simply on transforming your inner landscape. Consider for a moment the nature of turmoil itself. What creates it? When you examine your experiences honestly, you'll notice that turmoil arises not from events themselves, but from your resistance to those events, from your judgments about whether they should or shouldn't be happening, from your fears about what they might mean for your future, from your attachment to outcomes you cannot control. The weather changes, seasons come and go, people act according to their own understanding, circumstances shift and flow, yet none of these things inherently contain turmoil. The turmoil exists only in the human mind that struggles against what is, that demands reality conform to its preferences, that refuses to accept the natural unfolding of life. Now imagine a different way of being. Picture yourself standing on a mountain peak, high above the valleys where storms rage and winds howl. From that elevated position, you can observe the tumult below without being caught in it. You can see the patterns and purposes that aren't visible from ground level. You can maintain your equilibrium and clarity regardless of what's happening in the world beneath you. This isn't mere fantasy or wishful thinking. This is the actual state of consciousness that becomes available when you rise above the limited perspective of the reactive, emotional, desire-driven mind. This is what it means to live above life's turmoil. The journey to this elevated state begins with a fundamental shift in understanding. You must first recognize that your thoughts are not random occurrences imposed upon you by external forces, but are actually creations of your own consciousness, products of the beliefs, attitudes, and mental habits you've developed over time. Every thought you think is like a seed planted in the garden of your mind, and those seeds inevitably produce corresponding fruits in your experience. Plant seeds of anger, resentment, fear, and envy, and you'll harvest a life filled with conflict, disappointment, and suffering. Plant seeds of love, understanding, patience, and compassion, and you'll harvest a life of harmony, fulfillment, and peace. This principle operates with absolute consistency, never failing, never making exceptions. It doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you like it or not. Your thoughts are creating your reality every single moment of every single day. When you truly grasp this truth, not just intellectually but in the very core of your being, everything changes. You stop seeing yourself as a helpless victim and start recognizing yourself as a powerful creator. You stop blaming circumstances and start taking responsibility for the quality of your inner life. You stop waiting for the world to change and start transforming yourself from within. But here's where many people stumble on this path. They hear these principles and immediately try to manipulate their thoughts in order to get what they want from life. They attempt to think positively while their hearts remain filled with negativity. They affirm abundance while deeply believing in scarcity. They pretend to be peaceful while internally churning with turmoil. This approach fails because it's based on the same old pattern of trying to control external outcomes through force and manipulation. Real transformation doesn't work that way. It requires something deeper, something more authentic, something that can only be called inner purification. To rise above life's turmoil, you must be willing to examine yourself with unflinching honesty, to acknowledge the darkness within as well as the light, to confront the selfishness, pettiness, and weakness that you've perhaps been denying or hiding even from yourself. This isn't about self-condemnation or wallowing in guilt. It's about clear-sighted recognition of what is, because only by seeing clearly can you begin to change. When you discover within yourself a tendency toward anger, you don't have to justify it or defend it or pretend it's someone else's fault. You simply observe it, understand its origins, and begin the patient work of replacing it with a better quality. Think about a person who constantly experiences conflict in their relationships. They might tell you that they're unlucky in finding good partners, that people always let them down, that the world is full of dishonest and unreliable individuals. But if they were willing to look deeper, they might discover that they themselves carry within their consciousness patterns of suspicion, judgment, and defensiveness that actually create the very conflicts they complain about. Their thoughts broadcast a certain energy, their attitudes shape their perceptions, their expectations influence their behaviors, and all of this contributes to manifesting the difficult relationships they experience. The turmoil isn't happening to them, it's happening through them. The same principle applies to every area of life. The person who struggles financially while harboring thoughts of lack and unworthiness, the individual who suffers from health problems while maintaining mental habits of worry and stress, the worker who faces constant difficulties while nursing attitudes of resentment and resistance, all of these people are experiencing the outer manifestation of their inner state. This isn't about blaming them for their problems. It's about empowering them to see that they have the ability to change their circumstances by changing themselves. Now let's explore what happens when someone begins this inner work with sincerity and dedication. At first, they might feel discouraged because they become more aware of their negative patterns than ever before. This is actually a sign of progress, not regression. You can't change what you don't see, so increased awareness, even when it's uncomfortable, is the first step toward transformation. As they persist in observing their thoughts without judgment, simply noting when unhelpful patterns arise, something remarkable begins to happen. The patterns start to lose their grip. The automatic reactions begin to slow down. A space opens up between stimulus and response, a space where choice becomes possible. In that space, that precious gap of consciousness, freedom emerges. Instead of automatically reacting with anger when someone offends you, you find yourself pausing, considering, choosing a wiser response. Instead of immediately falling into fear when faced with uncertainty, you discover an ability to rest in trust and faith. Instead of being swept away by every passing emotion, you develop the capacity to remain centered and calm. This is what it means to rise above turmoil. Not to eliminate challenges from your life, but to face them from a place of inner strength and wisdom, rather than from reactive fear and confusion. The person who has done this inner work begins to notice changes not only in their internal experience, but also in their external circumstances. Relationships that were once sources of constant conflict either heal and deepen or naturally fall away, making room for more harmonious connections. Opportunities that previously seemed blocked suddenly open up. Challenges that once felt overwhelming become manageable or even interesting. This isn't because the universe has suddenly decided to favor them. It's because they've changed the vibrational quality of their consciousness, and reality responds accordingly. Let me share with you a story that illustrates this principle beautifully. There was once a woman who lived in constant turmoil, always anxious, always stressed, always finding something to worry about. Her health was suffering, her relationships were strained, her work felt burdensome, everything in her life seemed difficult. One day, after reaching a point of complete exhaustion, she encountered teachings similar to those James Allen presents. At first, she was skeptical. How could changing her thoughts possibly change her difficult life circumstances? But she was desperate enough to try. She began simply by observing her mental patterns without trying to change them. What she discovered shocked her. Her mind was producing a constant stream of negative commentary, judgment, worry, and fear. She criticized herself mercilessly. She imagined worst-case scenarios constantly. She interpreted neutral situations as threatening. She replayed past hurts endlessly. No wonder she felt terrible. Her consciousness was saturated with poison of her own making. But here's the crucial part. She didn't condemn herself for this discovery. She simply acknowledged it with compassion and began the gentle work of change. Each time she noticed a negative thought, she would pause and ask herself, is this thought true? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? Often, the answer was no to all three questions. Gradually, she began replacing those unhelpful thoughts with more accurate, constructive ones. When she caught herself catastrophizing about the future, she would gently redirect her attention to the present moment, where things were usually fine. When she noticed herself replaying old resentments, she would consciously choose forgiveness and release. When she felt her body tensing with stress, she would breathe deeply and relax. The changes didn't happen overnight. Transformation never does. But over weeks and months, something fundamental shifted within her. She found herself naturally more peaceful, more patient, more kind, both toward herself and others. Her health began to improve as the chronic stress released from her body. Her relationships deepened as she stopped being defensive and controlling. Her work became more enjoyable as she approached it with a different attitude. The external circumstances of her life hadn't dramatically changed, but she had changed, and that made all the difference. This woman's story demonstrates a crucial truth. You don't have to wait for your circumstances to be perfect before you can experience peace. You don't have to fix everything in your external world before you can be happy. You can choose, right now, in this moment, to begin the inner work that will elevate your consciousness above life's turmoil. Every moment presents this choice, and every choice you make either keeps you trapped in reactive suffering or lifts you toward conscious serenity. Now, some people might object to this teaching by saying it sounds like spiritual bypassing, like denying real problems or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. But that's a misunderstanding of what rising above turmoil actually means. It doesn't mean becoming indifferent to suffering, your own or others. It doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities or refusing to take action when action is needed. It doesn't mean pretending that injustice, cruelty, or hardship don't exist. What it means is facing all of life's challenges from a place of inner stability rather than inner chaos, responding to difficulties with wisdom rather than panic, maintaining your essential peace even while actively working to improve conditions. Consider the image of a lotus flower, which grows in muddy water yet rises above the surface to bloom in pristine beauty. The lotus doesn't deny the mud, doesn't pretend the mud isn't there, doesn't avoid the mud. The mud is actually necessary for the lotus's growth, providing nutrients and anchorage. But the lotus doesn't become the mud, doesn't identify with the mud, doesn't allow itself to be defined by the mud. It rises through and above the murky water to manifest its true nature in the clear air and sunlight. This is the perfect metaphor for what it means to live above life's turmoil. You acknowledge the difficulties, the challenges, the unpleasant aspects of life, but you don't allow them to determine your inner state. You work with circumstances skillfully and practically, while maintaining an inner sanctuary that remains undisturbed by external chaos. This is the balance that James Allen invites us to discover: engaged with life but not enslaved by it, responsive but not reactive, caring but not consumed by worry, active but not agitated. The practical application of these principles requires understanding several key areas where turmoil commonly arises and learning how to transcend each one. Let's explore these areas in depth, because this is where theory meets practice, where philosophy becomes lived experience, where understanding transforms into wisdom. First, consider the turmoil that arises from our desires and attachments. Most people spend their entire lives in a state of constant craving, always wanting something they don't have, always believing that happiness lies just beyond their current reach. If only I had more money, then I'd be content. If only I found the right partner, then I'd be fulfilled. If only I achieved that goal, then I'd be satisfied. But notice what happens when you actually get what you wanted. There's a brief moment of satisfaction, perhaps, and then the mind immediately begins craving something else. The cycle never ends, because the problem isn't that you lack external things. The problem is that you're seeking fulfillment in a place where it cannot be found. True peace comes not from satisfying every desire, but from understanding the nature of desire itself. When you observe your desires closely, you notice that many of them arise not from genuine need, but from comparison, from advertising, from social conditioning, from the ego's endless hunger for validation and security. You don't actually need most of what you think you need. And even the legitimate needs you have, while they should certainly be addressed practically, don't have to dominate your consciousness or determine your emotional state. Living above the turmoil of desire means meeting your genuine needs sensibly, while not being controlled by the endless wanting of the restless mind. It means enjoying what you have, rather than constantly fixating on what you lack. It means finding satisfaction in simple things, in the present moment, in the miracle of your own existence. When you reach this state, you discover something paradoxical. You actually become more effective at creating abundance in your life, because you're no longer approaching it from desperate neediness, but from creative overflow. Second, examine the turmoil created by your judgments and opinions. How much of your mental and emotional energy is consumed by judging others, by having strong opinions about how things should be, by feeling angry or frustrated when reality doesn't match your preferences? The mind loves to judge, loves to divide the world into good and bad, right and wrong, acceptable and unacceptable. But every judgment you make creates a potential source of suffering, because reality rarely conforms to your judgments. People will do things you disapprove of, situations will unfold in ways you didn't prefer, life will continue to be messy and unpredictable and beyond your control. Rising above this turmoil doesn't require abandoning all discernment or becoming passive to injustice. Rather, it means developing the wisdom to recognize what you can influence and what you cannot, accepting what you cannot change while skillfully working to improve what you can. It means holding your opinions lightly, remaining open to new perspectives, recognizing that your view is always partial and limited. It means responding to others with compassion rather than condemnation, understanding that everyone is doing the best they can from their current level of consciousness. When you release the exhausting habit of constant judgment, you free up tremendous energy. You become less reactive, less defensive, less angry. You find it easier to connect with others because you're not constantly evaluating and criticizing them. You experience more peace because you're not in constant conflict with reality. This doesn't make you naive or vulnerable, quite the opposite. It makes you wiser and stronger because your energy isn't being drained by useless mental resistance. Third, confront the turmoil born from fear and anxiety about the future. So much human suffering is created by worry about things that haven't happened and usually never will. Your mind projects into an imagined future, constructing scary scenarios, anticipating problems, rehearsing difficulties, and your body responds to these mental fictions as if they were real, flooding you with stress hormones and tension. You exhaust yourself fighting battles that exist only in your imagination. The antidote to this turmoil is developing the capacity to rest in the present moment. Right now, in this actual moment, are you okay? Not in the story your mind is telling about the future, but right now, in your direct experience, are you safe? Are you breathing? Are you alive? Usually, the answer is yes. Most of our suffering happens in mental time travel, visiting regrets about the past or anxieties about the future, while the present moment, the only moment we actually have, remains relatively peaceful. This doesn't mean failing to plan or prepare for the future. Practical planning is wise and necessary, but there's a vast difference between useful planning and useless worrying. Planning is specific, actionable, and time-limited. Worrying is vague, repetitive, and endless. Learning to distinguish between these two and releasing the habit of worry is one of the most powerful ways to rise above life's turmoil. Fourth, address the turmoil created by your resistance to change and your attachment to the past. Life is inherently dynamic, constantly flowing, eternally changing. Relationships evolve, bodies age, circumstances shift. Nothing remains the same, yet the mind craves stability and security, wants to hold on to what's familiar, fears the unknown. This creates tremendous inner conflict because you're trying to make permanent what is inherently impermanent. Freedom comes through accepting impermanence, through learning to flow with life rather than against it. This doesn't mean not caring about anything or becoming detached in an unhealthy way. It means loving deeply while holding lightly, engaging fully while accepting that nothing lasts forever. It means honoring the past without being imprisoned by it, learning from experience while remaining open to new possibilities. When you accept change as the natural rhythm of existence, you stop wasting energy fighting the inevitable. You become more adaptable, more resilient, more creative. You discover that endings, while sometimes painful, make space for new beginnings. You realize that loss, while genuine and deserving of grief, doesn't have to destroy you. You develop a kind of courageous flexibility that allows you to dance with life rather than constantly bracing against it. Fifth, recognize the turmoil born from your identification with the small self, the ego, the personality that believes itself to be separate, limited, and vulnerable. So much suffering arises from taking everything personally, from feeling threatened by others' success, from defending your image, from seeking validation and approval, from fearing criticism and rejection. The ego is inherently insecure because it's built on a foundation of illusion, the illusion that you are only this body, this personality, this collection of memories and characteristics. Rising above this turmoil requires awakening to a deeper identity, recognizing that your true nature is not the limited self, but the consciousness that observes the self. The awareness that remains constant while thoughts, emotions, and experiences come and go. You are not your thoughts, you are the one who notices thoughts. You are not your emotions, you are the space in which emotions arise and pass. You are not your circumstances, you are the consciousness experiencing circumstances. This shift in identity, from identifying with the small self to recognizing your nature as pure awareness, is perhaps the most profound transformation possible. It doesn't happen through intellectual understanding alone, but through direct experience, through practices like meditation, self-inquiry, and mindful living. As this recognition deepens, you find yourself naturally rising above so much of what used to disturb you. Criticism doesn't wound so deeply because you're not so identified with the self being criticized. Failure doesn't devastate because you understand it as an event, not a definition of your worth. Success doesn't inflate your ego because you recognize that your value isn't dependent on external achievement. Now, having explored these major sources of turmoil and the paths to transcend them, let's address a crucial question. How do you actually practice living above life's turmoil on a daily basis? Because these principles, while true and powerful, remain merely interesting ideas unless you translate them into lived experience through consistent practice. Begin each day with a period of stillness and centering. Before you engage with the world's demands, take time to connect with your deeper self through meditation, prayer, contemplation, or whatever practice resonates with you. In this quiet space, remind yourself of the principles you're working to embody. Set an intention for how you want to be today, not what you want to achieve, but how you want to show up, what qualities you want to express, what level of consciousness you want to maintain. Throughout your day, develop the habit of pausing regularly to check in with yourself. Notice what you're thinking, feeling, experiencing. Are you caught up in turmoil, or are you maintaining your center? If you've lost your balance, that's okay. Simply acknowledge it without judgment and gently return to presence. These brief moments of mindful awareness, practiced many times throughout the day, gradually strengthen your capacity to remain conscious rather than being carried away by automatic reactions. When challenging situations arise, as they inevitably will, practice the pause between stimulus and response. Someone says something hurtful, don't immediately react. Pause, breathe, feel the impulse to react without acting on it. Then choose your response consciously. You receive disappointing news. Don't immediately fall into despair. Pause, acknowledge your feelings, but also recognize that you have a choice about how you relate to those feelings and what meaning you assign to the situation. Cultivate gratitude as a daily practice. The mind naturally focuses on problems, on what's wrong, on what's lacking. Consciously directing your attention to what you appreciate, to what's working, to the blessings in your life, actually rewires your brain over time, making you naturally more positive and peaceful. This isn't about denying problems, but about maintaining a balanced perspective that sees the full picture rather than only the negative aspects. Practice compassion, both for yourself and others. When you make mistakes, respond to yourself with kindness rather than harsh criticism. When others behave in ways you find difficult, try to understand rather than immediately condemn. Remember that everyone is fighting battles you know nothing about, carrying wounds you can't see, doing their best with the consciousness and resources they have. This compassionate perspective doesn't mean accepting abuse or refusing to set boundaries, but it does mean approaching life's difficulties with a softer heart. Engage in regular self-reflection, perhaps through journaling. Review your day, noticing patterns in your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. What triggered you today? How did you respond? What worked well? What could you do differently next time? This kind of honest self-examination, done without harsh judgment, accelerates your growth tremendously. You begin to see your patterns clearly, which is the first step to changing them. Surround yourself as much as possible with influences that support your growth. The content you consume, the people you spend time with, the environments you inhabit, all of these shape your consciousness. Seek out wisdom teachings, spend time in nature, connect with people who inspire you to be your best self, limit exposure to media and situations that trigger your reactive patterns. You're creating an external environment that supports your internal development. Be patient with yourself. Rising above life's turmoil is not something you achieve once and then have forever. It's an ongoing practice, a continuous returning to presence, a daily choice to respond from wisdom rather than reactivity. You'll have good days and difficult days, periods of clarity and periods of confusion, times when you feel you're making great progress, and times when you feel you're back where you started. All of this is normal, natural, and part of the journey. What matters is not perfection but direction, not never falling but always getting back up. As you persist in these practices, something beautiful begins to happen. The qualities you're cultivating, peace, wisdom, compassion, strength, gradually become more natural to you. What once required tremendous effort becomes increasingly effortless. You find yourself automatically responding to situations in healthier ways. You notice that challenges that would have previously devastated you now roll off more easily. You discover reserves of strength and resilience you didn't know you possessed. This is your true nature emerging, the deeper self that was always there but was obscured by layers of conditioning, fear, and reactive patterns. People around you begin to notice the change as well. They might comment that you seem different, calmer, happier, more grounded. Some will be inspired and ask you what's changed, creating opportunities to share what you're learning. Others might feel threatened by your transformation because it challenges their own patterns and beliefs, and they might increase their criticism or attempts to pull you back into old dynamics. Your job is not to convince anyone or to defend your path, but simply to continue walking it with integrity, allowing your life to be the testimony to the truth you've discovered. One of the most profound realizations that comes from living above life's turmoil is understanding that you can be a force for good in the world, precisely because you're not caught up in its chaos. When you're consumed by your own turmoil, you have little to offer others except perhaps shared commiseration. But when you've found your center, when you've cultivated inner peace, you become a stabilizing presence wherever you go. Your calm becomes contagious. Your wisdom becomes a resource others can draw upon. Your compassion creates space for healing. This is not about becoming superior to others or seeing yourself as more evolved. Quite the opposite. Rising above turmoil cultivates genuine humility because you recognize how much you still have to learn, how vast consciousness is, how infinite the journey of growth. But it does mean you're no longer adding to the world's suffering through your own unconsciousness. You're beginning to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. You're contributing light rather than darkness, peace rather than chaos, love rather than fear. Think about the ripple effects of your transformation. As you become more peaceful, the people in your immediate circle experience less conflict. As you become more wise, you make better decisions that positively impact not just yourself, but everyone affected by those decisions. As you become more loving, you create an atmosphere where others feel safe to be themselves, to open up, to grow. Your personal transformation becomes a gift to the collective. This brings us to a deeper understanding of why rising above life's turmoil matters not just for your own well-being, but for the well-being of all. We live in an interconnected world where consciousness affects consciousness, where one person's inner state radiates outward in ways we can barely measure. Every time you choose peace over reactivity, wisdom over impulsiveness, love over fear, you're contributing to a shift in the collective consciousness of humanity. You're proving that another way is possible. You're being the change, as Gandhi famously said, that you wish to see in the world. Now let's address some of the deeper implications of these teachings. When you truly rise above life's turmoil, when you establish yourself in that elevated state of consciousness that James Allen describes, you begin to perceive reality very differently than most people do. You start to see that what the world calls problems are often opportunities for growth, that what appears as obstacles are actually stepping stones, that what feels like endings are really new beginnings in disguise. This shift in perception is not about positive thinking or putting a good spin on bad situations. It's about developing the vision to see more deeply into the nature of things, to recognize patterns and purposes that aren't visible from the surface level. You begin to understand that your soul, your deeper self, actually orchestrates experiences for your evolution, that nothing in your life is random or meaningless, that even the most difficult experiences are serving your highest good in ways you might not immediately comprehend. When you live from this understanding, you develop a profound trust in life itself, not a naive trust that nothing bad will ever happen, but a mature trust that whatever happens, you have the inner resources to meet it, to learn from it, to grow through it. This trust doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but it does eliminate the anxiety about uncertainty. You're able to move forward into the unknown with courage and even excitement, curious about what lessons and gifts await you there. This elevated state also brings a natural simplification to life. So much of human complexity and complication arises from inner conflict, from wanting two contradictory things, from not knowing who you really are or what truly matters to you. As you clarify your consciousness, as you align with your deeper values and purposes, life becomes simpler. Decisions become easier because you have a clear inner compass. Relationships become less complicated because you're no longer playing games or wearing masks. Your path becomes clearer because you're not constantly second-guessing yourself or being pulled in different directions by conflicting desires. Another remarkable aspect of living above turmoil is the creativity it unleashes. When your mind is constantly agitated, caught up in worry and drama and reactive patterns, there's no space for genuine creativity to emerge. But when you establish inner stillness, when you create that spacious awareness, you tap into a wellspring of creative potential that was always there but was blocked by mental noise. Solutions to problems appear seemingly out of nowhere. New ideas and insights arise spontaneously. You find yourself able to think more clearly, see more options, approach challenges more inventively. This is why so many great artists, innovators, and leaders throughout history have emphasized the importance of contemplation, meditation, and inner silence. They understood that the deepest creativity doesn't come from the busy thinking mind, but from the quiet depths of consciousness that lie beyond thought. By rising above turmoil, you give yourself access to this deeper intelligence that operates in all of us but is usually drowned out by surface-level mental chatter. You also discover a quality that might be called effortless action. When you're living from turmoil, everything feels like a struggle. You're constantly pushing, striving, forcing, trying to make things happen through sheer willpower and effort. It's exhausting and often ineffective. But when you rise above turmoil and align with your deeper self, you find that right action flows naturally. You still work, you still make effort, but there's a quality of ease and flow to it. You're working with life rather than against it, cooperating with natural forces rather than trying to overpower them. This doesn't mean everything becomes easy or that you never face challenges. It means that even challenging situations are approached from a different energy, one of creative engagement rather than desperate struggle, one of confident capability rather than fearful inadequacy. You do what needs to be done, but you're not torn up inside while doing it. You maintain your equilibrium even in the midst of intense activity. Let's talk about relationships specifically, because this is an area where the principles we're discussing have profound practical application. Most people experience tremendous turmoil in their relationships, dramatic ups and downs, intense conflicts, deep disappointments, cycles of connection and disconnection. Why? Because they enter relationships from a place of neediness, seeking to get something, whether that's validation, security, pleasure, or relief from loneliness. When two people come together from this place of lack, trying to use each other to fill their inner emptiness, conflict is inevitable. But when you rise above turmoil, when you do the inner work to become whole within yourself, you bring an entirely different quality to your relationships. You're no longer desperately grasping, no longer trying to control, no longer devastated by every disappointment. Instead, you can offer genuine love, which means wanting the highest good for another person without needing them to be different than they are. You can give freely without keeping score. You can be present without being possessive. You can maintain healthy boundaries without being defensive. This transforms your relationships in remarkable ways. Paradoxically, when you stop needing others to make you happy, you often experience much more happiness in your relationships. When you stop trying to control others, your relationships often become much more harmonious. When you accept people as they are, they often become more able to change and grow. This is because you're relating to the deeper truth in others, recognizing and honoring their essential nature, creating a space where authentic connection becomes possible. Of course, not all relationships will survive your transformation. Some connections were based on mutual dysfunction, unconscious patterns that kept you both stuck. As you grow and change, relationships that aren't serving your highest good will naturally fall away. And while this can be painful, it's ultimately a blessing because it makes space for connections that are aligned with who you're becoming. Trust this process. The right people, those who resonate with your authentic self, will appear in your life at the right time. Now, as we go even deeper into understanding what it means to live above life's turmoil, we must address the spiritual dimension of these teachings. James Allen was writing not just about psychological techniques or personal development strategies, but about spiritual truth, about the fundamental nature of consciousness and reality. Whether you consider yourself religious, spiritual, or neither, there's value in exploring these deeper dimensions, because they provide context and meaning that can sustain you through even the most challenging times. At the spiritual level, rising above turmoil means recognizing that you are not merely a separate individual struggling for survival in a hostile universe, but an expression of a deeper intelligence, a unique manifestation of the creative force that animates all existence. Some people call this God, others call it the universe, the divine, source, spirit, or simply life itself. The name doesn't matter as much as the recognition that you're part of something infinitely greater than your small separate self. When you touch this recognition, even briefly, everything shifts. Your problems, while still real, are seen in a larger context. Your life, while still precious, is understood as one chapter in an eternal story. Your struggles, while still challenging, are perceived as temporary movements in an unchanging peace that underlies all experience. You realize that the essence of what you are has never been born and can never die, that the consciousness reading these words right now is the same consciousness that has always been and will always be, temporarily focused in this particular form and personality. This isn't meant to diminish your humanity or your individual experience. You are still this person with this life and these relationships and these responsibilities. But you're also more than that, and knowing this, even intellectually at first, provides an anchor of stability that can hold you steady through any storm. You become able to take your life seriously without taking it so personally, to care deeply about outcomes without being destroyed if things don't go as hoped. Many spiritual traditions describe stages or levels of consciousness, different altitudes of awareness through which human beings can evolve. Living in turmoil represents the earlier stages where you're completely identified with your thoughts, emotions, and circumstances, tossed about by every passing wind. Rising above turmoil represents movement into higher stages where you develop the capacity to observe your experience rather than being lost in it, to choose your responses rather than being controlled by automatic reactions, to access states of peace and clarity that exist independent of circumstances. The highest stages of consciousness described by mystics and sages across all traditions involve a complete transcendence of the separate self, a direct realization of unity with all existence, a permanent establishment in that peace which surpasses understanding. Most of us are not at those highest stages, but we can all take steps in that direction. Every moment of mindful awareness, every choice of love over fear, every release of judgment, every practice of compassion moves us up that ladder of consciousness. And here's something important to understand. This is not a linear journey where you simply progress forward step by step. It's more spiral-like, where you circle back to familiar challenges at different levels, dealing with similar issues but from increased heights of understanding. You might think you've resolved your anger only to encounter it again later, but now you're able to recognize it faster, understand it more deeply, release it more completely. This is growth, even though it might not always feel like progress. The key is persistence and patience. These qualities are absolutely essential on this journey. There will be times when you feel stuck, times when you seem to be going backwards, times when you doubt whether any of this matters or makes a difference. These are the moments that test your commitment. These are the opportunities to demonstrate faith, not faith in some external authority, but faith in the path itself. Faith in the truth of these principles, faith in your own capacity to grow and evolve. During difficult periods, remember why you started this journey. Remember the suffering that motivated you to seek a better way. Remember the glimpses of peace you've experienced, the moments when everything clicked and you knew beyond doubt that this is real, this is true, this is worth pursuing. Let those memories sustain you through the dark valleys that are an inevitable part of any genuine spiritual journey. Also remember that you're not alone on this path. Throughout history, countless individuals have walked this same journey, have faced the same challenges, have discovered the same truths. You're part of an ancient lineage of seekers, a great stream of humanity that has always reached toward higher consciousness. When you feel discouraged, connect with the wisdom of those who've gone before, read their words, reflect on their insights, draw strength from their example. They prove that transformation is possible, that peace can be found, that rising above turmoil is not just an idealistic fantasy, but a lived reality. Consider also finding companions for the journey, people who share your commitment to growth and consciousness. While the inner work must ultimately be done alone, having a community of support makes an enormous difference. Whether it's a meditation group, a book club focused on spiritual development, a teacher or mentor, or simply friends who understand what you're trying to do, these connections provide encouragement, accountability, and shared wisdom that accelerate your progress. As you continue this practice of living above life's turmoil, you'll notice something interesting happens with your relationship to suffering itself. In the beginning, you might try to avoid suffering altogether, seeing it as the enemy, something to be eliminated. But as you mature in your practice, you begin to understand that suffering, when met with awareness and wisdom, is actually a profound teacher. Every difficulty you face, every challenge you encounter, every moment of pain you experience contains within it a lesson, a gift, an opportunity for deeper understanding. This doesn't mean you should seek out suffering or remain in harmful situations unnecessarily. It means that when suffering inevitably arises, as it does in every human life, you can choose to learn from it rather than simply being destroyed by it. You can ask yourself what this experience is teaching you, how it's inviting you to grow, what aspect of your consciousness needs to evolve in order to meet this challenge more skillfully. When you approach suffering in this way, it becomes grist for the mill of transformation rather than meaningless torment. Some of the most profound growth happens precisely in the most difficult moments. When everything is easy and comfortable, there's little motivation to change or deepen. But when you're brought to your knees by loss or failure or betrayal or illness, when your usual coping mechanisms fail and your defenses crumble, you're forced to find something deeper within yourself. You're pushed to discover resources you didn't know you had, to develop capacities that remain dormant during easier times, to access levels of faith and courage and resilience that surprise even you. Many people who've been through severe trials report that, while they wouldn't choose to repeat the experience, they're ultimately grateful for it because of how much they grew through it, how much it deepened their compassion, strengthened their character, clarified their priorities, and connected them to their spiritual core. This is the alchemy of consciousness, the ability to transform the lead of suffering into the gold of wisdom. Now let's explore how these principles apply to some specific challenges that most people face. Consider the challenge of dealing with difficult people, those individuals who seem to bring out the worst in you, who trigger your reactive patterns, who create drama and conflict wherever they go. From the perspective of living above turmoil, even these difficult people are your teachers. They're showing you exactly where you still have work to do, where your consciousness still harbors reactivity, where you haven't yet established complete peace. When someone annoys you, frustrates you, angers you, they're not actually creating those feelings in you. They're simply activating feelings that already existed within your consciousness as latent patterns. A truly peaceful person, someone who has risen completely above turmoil, cannot be disturbed by external behavior. They might recognize that someone is acting unskillfully, they might choose to set boundaries or even end the relationship, but they do so from clarity and wisdom rather than from reactive emotion. So instead of blaming difficult people for your disturbance, you can thank them for showing you where you're not yet free. Then you can do the inner work to release those reactive patterns, to develop greater patience, compassion, and understanding. Over time, you'll notice that the people who used to trigger you intensely begin to have less and less effect. Either they change in response to your changed energy, or they no longer bother you even if they continue their same behavior, or they naturally exit your life as you vibrate at a different frequency. Consider also the challenge of dealing with uncertainty, which is perhaps one of the most fundamental sources of human anxiety. We want to know what's going to happen, want to feel secure about the future, want guarantees that things will work out. But life offers no such guarantees. No matter how much you plan or control or worry, you cannot eliminate uncertainty. The future is inherently unknown and unknowable. Living above turmoil means developing the capacity to be comfortable with uncertainty, to rest in not knowing, to move forward with confidence even when you can't see the entire path ahead. This requires cultivating trust, not blind faith that everything will be exactly as you want, but deeper trust that you have the capacity to handle whatever arises, that life is fundamentally for you rather than against you, that there's an intelligence operating beyond your limited understanding that's guiding your evolution. When you live from this place of trust, uncertainty becomes less threatening. You can make decisions based on your best current understanding while remaining open to new information. You can commit to a direction without needing absolute certainty. It's the right one. You can take risks and try new things without being paralyzed by fear of failure. This flexibility and courage open up possibilities that would never be available to someone who needs complete certainty before taking any action. Think about the challenge of facing your own mortality, which is perhaps the deepest fear that underlies all other fears. On some level, much of human turmoil stems from the terror of death, the existential anxiety about the impermanence of our existence. We try to distract ourselves from this reality, to deny it, to postpone thinking about it, but the fear remains, coloring our experience in subtle and not so subtle ways. Rising above this particular turmoil requires confronting mortality directly, not morbidly, but honestly and courageously. When you truly accept that this body will die, that this particular life has a finite duration, something shifts. Paradoxically, accepting death allows you to more fully embrace life. When you stop pretending you have unlimited time, you become more present to the precious moments you do have. When you acknowledge the impermanence of everything, you hold your experiences and relationships more tenderly, savoring them more deeply while they're here. Many spiritual traditions encourage meditation on death precisely because it clarifies priorities and reveals what truly matters. From the perspective of your deathbed, looking back on your life, what will have been important? Will you care about how much money you made, how many possessions you accumulated, how many people were impressed by you? Or will you care about how much you loved, how kind you were, how fully you lived, how authentic you were, how much you grew? Keeping this perspective in mind helps you rise above the trivial turmoil that consumes so much attention and energy. You become able to distinguish between what's truly important and what's merely urgent or dramatic. You stop sweating the small stuff because you recognize that, from the larger view, most of it is small stuff. This doesn't make you apathetic or nihilistic. Quite the opposite. It helps you invest your energy in what genuinely matters, rather than dispersing it on insignificant concerns. Let's also address the challenge of dealing with guilt, shame, and regret about past actions. So many people torture themselves with memories of mistakes they made, harm they caused, opportunities they missed. They replay these scenarios endlessly in their minds, punishing themselves, wishing they could go back and do things differently. This kind of rumination creates tremendous turmoil and accomplishes nothing positive. Rising above this turmoil requires understanding several things. First, you did the best you could with the consciousness you had at the time. You didn't know then what you know now. You hadn't learned then what you've learned since. Judging your past self with your present awareness is fundamentally unfair. Second, mistakes are how we learn and grow. If you never made mistakes, you'd never develop wisdom. The errors of your past have contributed to making you who you are today, and if you've learned from them, they've served a valuable purpose. Third, the past is gone and cannot be changed, but the present moment is alive with possibility. You can't undo what you did, but you can choose differently going forward. You can make amends where possible. You can commit to behaving more consciously from this point on. You can forgive yourself, not as permission to repeat harmful behaviors, but as release from the prison of self-condemnation that prevents you from moving forward. When you free yourself from the past in this way, you liberate tremendous energy that can be directed toward creating a better future. Similarly, consider the challenge of comparison and envy. In our modern world, with social media constantly showing us curated highlights from other people's lives, it's easy to fall into the trap of comparing your reality with others' facades. You see their successes, their happiness, their apparent perfection, and you feel inadequate, left behind, less than. This comparison creates terrible turmoil, robbing you of contentment and poisoning your appreciation of your own life. Living above this turmoil requires recognizing several truths. First, you're only seeing the surface of others' lives, not the struggles, doubts, and difficulties they hide. Everyone has challenges, everyone has pain, everyone has aspects of their life they're not sharing publicly. Second, comparison is inherently flawed because you're comparing your insides with others' outsides, your full complicated reality with their carefully managed image. Third, and most importantly, your journey is your own. You have a unique path, unique lessons to learn, unique gifts to develop, unique contributions to make. Comparing yourself with others is like a rose comparing itself with an oak tree. It makes no sense because they're fundamentally different forms with different purposes. Your job is not to be better than anyone else, but to be the fullest expression of your own potential, to develop your own gifts, to walk your own path with integrity and authenticity. When you release comparison and embrace your own journey, you discover that there's enough success, happiness, and fulfillment for everyone. Someone else's good fortune doesn't diminish yours. Someone else's talents don't negate yours. Someone else's happiness doesn't steal yours. In fact, you can genuinely celebrate others' successes when you're not viewing life as a competition where there are winners and losers. You recognize that we're all in this together, all learning, all growing, all doing our best to navigate this complex experience of being human. As we move toward the conclusion of this exploration, let me share one more story that beautifully illustrates these principles in action. There was a man who had experienced tremendous success in his career, achieved everything society told him would bring happiness, wealth, status, recognition, power. Yet he felt empty inside, constantly stressed, never satisfied, always anxious about maintaining what he'd built or achieving the next goal. His relationships were superficial. His health was deteriorating from stress. His life felt hollow, despite appearing so impressive from the outside. One day, a crisis hit that stripped away much of what he'd built. Through this difficult period, he was forced to confront the emptiness he'd been avoiding. He began asking deeper questions. What was all this striving for? What did he truly value? Who was he beyond his achievements and possessions? This questioning led him to teachings like those of James Allen, and he began the inner work we've been discussing. The transformation wasn't dramatic or sudden. There was no lightning bolt moment where everything changed. Instead, there were small shifts, subtle realizations, gradual changes in perspective and behavior. He started meditating daily, creating space for stillness in his previously frantic schedule. He began questioning his automatic thoughts rather than believing them all. He practiced being present with his family rather than constantly distracted by work concerns. He simplified his life, releasing commitments that didn't align with his deeper values. Slowly, something fundamental shifted. He found himself experiencing peace not because his circumstances were perfect, but because he'd changed his relationship to circumstances. He felt fulfilled not because he was achieving more, but because he was appreciating what he already had. He experienced freedom not because all his problems were solved, but because he'd stopped being enslaved by his reactive patterns. He discovered that the happiness he'd been seeking through external achievement had been available all along in the depths of his own consciousness. He'd just been too busy looking elsewhere to notice it. This man's story reminds us that it's never too late to begin this journey. No matter how long you've been living in turmoil, no matter how deeply entrenched your patterns, no matter how much suffering you've experienced, the possibility of transformation remains available. This very moment, right now as you're hearing these words, you can begin. You can take one conscious breath. You can notice one thought without believing it. You can choose one response from wisdom rather than reactivity. These small acts, repeated consistently, create massive change over time. The invitation is always present, the door is always open, the path is always available. Will you walk it? Will you commit to the inner work required to rise above life's turmoil? Will you persist even when it's difficult, even when you doubt, even when you can't see immediate results? This is not a choice you make once, but a choice you make again and again, moment by moment, day by day, year by year. And here's the beautiful thing. Every step you take on this path makes the next step easier. Every moment of practice strengthens your capacity for presence. Every choice of wisdom over reactivity deepens your inner peace. Every release of judgment opens your heart a little wider. You're building momentum, creating new neural pathways, establishing new patterns that become increasingly natural and automatic over time. The life that awaits you on the other side of this transformation is more wonderful than you can currently imagine. Not because external circumstances will necessarily be perfect, though they often do improve significantly, but because you'll be experiencing those circumstances from a completely different state of consciousness. You'll have access to reserves of peace, joy, love, and wisdom that you didn't know existed. You'll be able to meet life's challenges with grace and courage. You'll find meaning and purpose even in difficulty. You'll feel connected to something greater than yourself. You'll be free in ways you never thought possible. This is not fantasy or exaggeration. This is the lived reality of countless individuals throughout history who have walked this path and discovered these truths for themselves. James Allen was one such person, and his writings are a gift to all of us, a map for the journey, a testament that transformation is possible. But don't just take his word for it, or mine. Test these principles in your own life. Apply them sincerely and consistently. Observe what happens. Become your own proof. Remember, you don't have to be perfect at this. You don't have to never feel anger or fear or sadness. You don't have to eliminate all challenges from your life. You simply need to keep returning to presence, keep choosing consciousness over unconsciousness, keep doing the inner work even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's what rising above life's turmoil really means. Not transcending your humanity, but bringing consciousness to it. Not escaping life, but engaging it more fully from a place of inner stability. As you continue on this journey, be gentle with yourself. Celebrate your progress, however small. Forgive your setbacks, however large. Trust the process. Have faith in your capacity to grow and evolve. Know that you're supported by the wisdom of those who've gone before, by the love of those who care about you, by the intelligence of life itself that's always moving toward greater wholeness and consciousness. And remember this always, the peace you're seeking is not something you need to create or acquire or achieve. It's already present within you, always has been, always will be. Your true nature is peaceful, whole, complete. The turmoil is just clouds passing across the sky of your consciousness, real but temporary, present but not permanent. Your work is not to create peace, but to remove the obstacles that obscure the peace that's already there. Every practice, every insight, every moment of awareness is removing another obstacle, letting more of your natural radiance shine through. So I encourage you now, wherever you are in your journey, whatever challenges you're facing, whatever turmoil you're experiencing, to remember that you have within you everything you need to rise above it. You have consciousness, which means you can observe your experience rather than being lost in it. You have choice, which means you can respond wisely rather than react automatically. You have love, which means you can meet yourself and others with compassion rather than judgment. You have wisdom, which means you can learn from every experience rather than simply suffering through it. Use these gifts, develop these capacities, walk this path with commitment and courage, and know that with every step you're not only transforming your own life, but contributing to the transformation of human consciousness itself. You're proving that another way is possible. You're being a light in the darkness. You're fulfilling your highest purpose, which is to awaken to your true nature and help others do the same. The journey of rising above life's turmoil is the greatest adventure you can undertake, more important than any external achievement, more valuable than any material possession, more fulfilling than any worldly success. It's the journey home to yourself, to peace, to freedom, to love, to truth. And it begins right here, right now, with your willingness to take the first step, or if you've already begun, to take the next step. May you walk this path with courage and persistence. May you find the peace that surpasses understanding. May you rise above life's turmoil and discover the magnificent being you truly are. May you live from that elevated consciousness, sharing your light with a world that desperately needs it. And may you know, deep in your heart, that you are loved, supported, and guided every step of the way. Please like and subscribe to Audiobook Library, as it helps the channel to grow and continue bringing you transformative content like this. Your support allows us to share more wisdom, more teachings, more inspiration that can help you and others on this beautiful journey of awakening and transformation. The teachings we've explored today are timeless truths that have the power to completely transform your experience of life, but they only work if you apply them, if you take them from the realm of interesting ideas into the realm of lived experience. So I encourage you to start today, right now in this moment. Take a conscious breath, notice your thoughts, choose peace over reactivity. Begin the journey of rising above life's turmoil, and watch as your entire world transforms from the inside out. Please check our video library for more content that can support you on your journey of growth and transformation. We have many other audiobooks, teachings, and inspirational content designed to help you live your most conscious, peaceful, and fulfilling life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being on this path. And thank you for being willing to do the inner work that makes all the difference. Your commitment to your own growth is a gift not only to yourself, but to everyone whose life you touch.